We can bring back Dr. Alan Mendoza. I believe his line has been restored. Alan, your reaction?
Well, obviously shocked but not surprised. Shocked because, this is a prisoner who has been allowed to die or been murdered in prison. But not surprised because, of course, Mr. Navalny had been threatened numerous times by the regime. He'd been poisoned beforehand. He was constantly punished, even in jail, in punitive isolation, issues like that. And it was obvious that they wanted to be rid of him. So, sadly, he himself said the last time he was sentenced on one of these sham sort of crimes he was alleged to have committed, my sentence will last either as long as I live or as long as a regime survives. And sadly, it would appear to be the former.
And I believe, Alan, you let us all know on Twitter not too long ago that you've been put on a sanctions list yourself.
Well, yes, obviously, I don't thankfully face the threat that Mr. Navalny did in the control of the regime, but it's quite clear that people who oppose Putin on any level are slapped down on sanctions lists. There's been loads of, sort of activists in the UK who've been similarly tarred with that brush, MPs, think tank leaders, business people. I mean, it's extraordinary. Basically, here's a regime that brooks no dissent, and it will take any action it feels it is warranted to do, whether that ranges from sanctions at the mild end to murder at the top end, in order to stop people from critiquing it and opposing its nefarious actions.
And this news comes, of course, only a week after Vladimir Putin gave his most public interview with former Fox News host Tucker Carlson. I don't believe he was asked about the state of democracy in Russia. Is that a coincidence? Well,
I think Putin is clearly feeling emboldened, frankly. I think he sees the wrangling that's going on over US aid to Ukraine. I think he sees, the sort of mess the US election is in. I think he looks at things like Tucker Carlson coming on bended knee to him in Moscow and listening to his nonsense for, hours on end. And I think he feels he can get away with anything. And it's really incumbent upon the free world to remind him that he can't. And that's the message that needs to come out very strongly this weekend, say, from the Munich Security Conference.
Do you believe that this will focus minds?
Oh, I think it certainly will. I mean, Navalny was a brave, courageous man who has paid for his life with opposition to an evil regime. That has to concentrate minds in all democracies.
And just to confirm, Alan, does this essentially now mean that there is no opposition to Vladimir Putin's rule in Russia?
Well, there remains opposition. I want to highlight the case of Vladimir Kara-Murza, another opposition leader also previously poisoned by Putin, who is in jail right now. Vladimir is a dual British citizen, of course, as well. And I would expect people to be redoubling efforts to save him from a similar fate, given there's now been a track record of opposition leaders in Russia being knocked off at various times by the Putin regime.
And of course, lastly, the presidential election set for March in Russia. Impact of this?
Well, we knew that Putin was going to win it anyway, and the idea that there's any serious opposition that's going to be allowed on the ballot. I mean, don't forget in the past, Navalny was stopped from being on the ballot. Other people have removed themselves because they know it's just a sham election. Of course, he's going to be re-elected because he was going to stuff the ballot regardless. So this has made no difference in that regard, but it tells you how paranoid this regime is. Even with certainty of victory, it still must see its opponents die rather than allow any form of expression.